Well, millions of Americans are already losing their health care coverage. Now word, we ain't seen nothing yet. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and be prepared to be shocked. With 189 million Americans on private health insurance, there's a health expert today predicting 2 out of 3 of them won't be able to keep it. That their plans that the president said they would be able to keep, they will not be able to keep. That works out to 129 million Americans. So is it any wonder the president barely mentioned the health care law while campaigning for Democrat Terry McAuliffe in Virginia? We're going to ask the Republican in that race, Ken Cuccinelli, what he makes of all of this. First, to that 129 million number and the guy who came up with it. His name is Christopher Conover. He's a research scholar for the Health Policy over at Duke University. He's also with the American Enterprise Institute. What seems to be raising eyebrows with this study, your study, Chris, is that it dwarfs anything we've been told about people who might be self-employed and seeking their insurance. This cuts to the core of those who are covered right now by their companies, that could be short-lived. Explain.
Well, keep in mind that 18 to 50 million will actually literally lose their plans. That is, they'll not have their plan and have to start from scratch on the exchange. But 129 million represents the people who have, even if they enjoyed their coverage in the past, will have different coverage with the bells and whistles that will cost them more money in premiums.
Who is this group? In other words, if you were covered at Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company, premier company, you've got coverage, you were among those thought not to be affected by this. You say not so. Why?
Well, because about 40% of the working uninsured are actually working for those large firms right now, and they're going to be subject to the employer mandate along with everyone else. So they may end up being in part-time jobs, or their employers may decide to drop them from coverage, either make the coverage too expensive or beyond their reach.
Prohibitive. So in other words, the 120, I just want to be clear, because this I think is the most staggering finding of any I've seen to date on this healthcare law.
Right.
That once the employer mandate kicks in, and your company could be a great company, you could have the best insurance, they're going to crunch the numbers and the requirements of the federal government, and they're going to have a choice to make, whether to continue that coverage, albeit probably at higher premiums, or to dump that coverage and throw you out onto exchanges, right?
Right, and I don't want to imply that 129 million are losing their employer-based coverage. Out of that, up to 50 million who will lose their plans, 35 million, according to former CBO Director Doug Holtz-Egan, may lose their employer-based coverage.
Okay, so we might have gotten the first salvo here, just to be clear, with IBM and Time Warner junking hundreds of thousands of their retirees for whom they were providing health coverage. They just unleashed them and said, look, we can't afford it, you're out of here, we're going to take care of our present workers, all of you retirees, here's something to get you going on the exchanges. But you're saying that when, a year from now, when this employer mandate is kicking in, that's just going to get exponentially bigger, not only for retirees, but for existing workers.
Well, I'm saying that up to 35 million workers may lose their plan. The rest of the workers, they may keep the old plan that they have, but they're going to be subject to having to pay for Obamacare mandated bells and whistles.
So how much more?
So it may not necessarily be the plan they used to have.
All right, I'm sorry, I keep jumping. That seems rude to folks at home, but I want to be clear over how big a deal this is. If that happens, and they're lucky enough to keep their coverage, how much more would they have to pay for that coverage?
Well, it depends on your employer size and all of that. So some employers are having to pay a few percentage points more. Others are having to pay double-digit percentage rates increases in their premiums in order to have coverage. The smallest firms are the small firms that are subject to the mandate, I should say, are probably going to be the most adversely affected. The smallest firms don't have to offer coverage in the first place. They can just put their workers on the exchange if they want to.
Man, oh man. All right, Chris Conover, thank you very, very much. Again, what this means, folks, just to put it in layman's terms, is if you promise something for nothing and assume that if you want to cover 30 million uninsured Americans, you want to put their kids on their policy till they're 26, you want to cover pre-existing conditions, all laudable goals. It ain't going to come cheap, and it will cost. And that all hits the fan maybe within the next year. So